Welcome back, everybody, or welcome to Nain Shorts. Thank you for joining me. For those returning, awesome. For those watching for the first time, awesome, because I really like doing this. I've grown accustomed to doing this, and I kind of get jonesing if I don't get to put a video out. It's not for the social media aspect of it, but because for me, this is an exploration of my fifth level of understanding. Now, for those of you who are new to this, in the Bladed Mind, we have five levels of understanding. And that's how we gauge how well we understand any particular lesson, culminating in your fifth level, which is your own way of interpreting anything that you get, whether it's from your instructor or outside instructors, and how you make that your own. First level, gross motion, the physical stuff. Second is detailing, all the details that are involved with that particular motion. Third level is variation. Fourth level is teaching, and that's what opens the gateway to your level 5, and that's where I find myself now in that gateway. Right now, it's a small door, to use a metaphor, and information comes in and gets filtered, and it becomes my own understanding of things. But level 4 is about passing on information, which means however it gets put together in your mind, can you get that across to somebody else? And more importantly, and here's the detail for this, can you get them to understand it as deeply as you do at whatever level they're at that particular lesson, at that particular time, but their way, their own level 5 or the precursors to it? Because as much as we like to think about as levels 1, 2, and 3 as being the physical aspects of it, it never really is about the physical in the Bladed Mind. It's all about the mental process, how things are taken in and then put together. Because regardless of what you learn or who you are, it's always going to affect what the information means to you. And as an instructor, if I don't understand that of that particular student, then I can give them the best information in the world and it will amount to nothing. Because I don't know how it's going to fit with them. And it's a little difficult to explain without giving you a little background on my personal process. Now, the reason I started this journey is because I wanted to better myself. I had some personal issues that I was trying to overcome, and I realized I need to grow, I need to mature, and I started on a journey, failed several times, and realized I need some sort of guidance, I need something to focus on. And you know what? I'm scared. Why don't I do something that I've always wanted to do but never had the means to do? Study martial arts, practice something, learn how to kick and punch and elbow and break things. And really, that's a lot of people's first impression of the martial arts, learning how to do these things. But over time, I continuously failed to grasp the lessons. My instructors are very patient, Danny, and then eventually Rick, taking over my personal training. They continuously repeated themselves. And a parent will understand this. You constantly tell your kids the same thing over and over and over again. And I remember very vividly when I finally moved out of my parents' home and I came across a situation, and in the back of my head I heard my mom's voice. Because at that moment, at that time, I realized what she really meant, and that she had repeated herself so many times, because all we ever said to them was, yeah, I know. I get it, Mom. Just so they wouldn't continue talking. But the reality is, we didn't get it. We didn't understand it until it became a part of our own thought process. And we realized, oh, okay, that's what they meant. And as an instructor, you often find yourselves, or at least the way I was taught to instruct, repeating yourself, even though to the student everything seems new and everything seems different. We're essentially just repeating the same lesson until they really understand. And you see that understanding, and then you can move on to the next part. Because it took me years of doing the physical stuff, going hard, repetition over and over again, and until I finally realized that it wasn't about the physical. It was about all the lessons behind the physical. all the drills and exercises, they were vehicles, they were tools to convey an idea. What I needed to grow to become the person that I am today was not X amount of drills or techniques. It wasn't being able to hit hard. It wasn't able to lock a joint or even break it, get out of a hole or wrestle. I do all those things and they're a lot of fun to play with. But what got me to grow was to understand the reason why I wasn't getting it at the beginning. What was holding me up? What were the walls? How was I taking the information and going totally left or right in some cases and missing the main point of what it was about? Because it wasn't until it clicked here, until I realized why I was doing the things that I was doing, and that I finally was able to get how to do them better. And as of a few weeks ago, I've taken a student, one that is now my own student. Rick is still involved in teaching, and for years I've helped him teach other students as well as Danny during the class. But this is now my student to cultivate. And Rick, in the past, while I've helped him, has given me lessons on the teaching process itself. And until I started doing it on my own without his supervision, did those ideas really start clicking. You have to know the person in front of you for this to work. You have to understand what their hang-ups are. And the key thing about it is that you have to help them, guide them to see that for themselves. Anyone who's worked with somebody who has addictions or habits that they're compulsive, knows that you can't just flat out tell them, hey, you're doing this, because they're either going to believe you or they're not, and most of the time they're going to fight you on it because they don't believe it, they don't see it, and until they do for themselves, they don't start correcting anything. The lessons themselves mean nothing, and we revert to what we know best, and that's moving. That's why the bladed mind isn't geared for larger groups. Now, there are arts out there that are geared for larger groups, and our good friend Nicholas Moreno, in his interview on our colleague Konversation channel, he explained why, the history behind why large groups were trained a certain way, and the top 10 were then moved aside and became officers, because again, martial arts, very militaristic. It does come from combat, and many of which were systemic in developing officers, developing soldiers that can then teach other soldiers to maintain that strength and grow as a unit. But now, in the era that we're in, if all we're looking for is self-protection, and we think that all we need is to learn how to punch, how to kick, how to block, how to throw, when in reality, the best thing that we could get out of anything, any of our training, is learning how to be calm in a stressful situation. And I want to say that again. Learning how to be calm in a stressful situation is going to save you more often than not than 1,000 techniques, because that's what the bladed mind is geared for. It's geared for self-protection, applicable self-protection. The physical stuff is great, it's fun, it's part of the art, you learn the history of an entire culture, but that's not what saves you. And that's what we gear this for, and that's why this particular segment is so important to me, because it's developed me into who I am today. My mind ran 1,000,000 miles a minute in every different direction, but I learned focus. I learned the importance of discipline. I wasn't taught how to be disciplined, but I was given enough information where I finally realized why it's important to be this way, why humility will save you from a conflict, why being able to see something coming from across the street and getting out of the way before it becomes an issue is so important. And that's what I want to convey to my student, because I see now his hang-ups. I see the things that are keeping him from truly understanding the lessons behind the drills. And you can see the manifestation when something does click. Their entire body changes. The way that they move, whether it's smoother or quicker or sharper, or whatever the lesson is for that particular day. But when it clicks, you have those aha moments, those euphoric times where you just feel like everything falls into place. And that's where we focus our training on, getting the students to do that. You can't do it in a large group. It has to be individual, and you really have to pay attention to the student themselves. Now, recently I was helping Rick with one of his students, a female student by the name of Dion. Great person, wonderful human being. But getting her to this point took some time. It took a degree of patience. More importantly, it took getting to know how she takes in information and what to say to trigger the importance that I discovered years back through this training that made me excel, that made me want to go home and practice not the drills, but the concepts behind them, the why, the reason for doing them the way that they were explained to be done. And we want to share that with you today by showing you some of the clips. Now, the first clip you're about to see is Dion doing a specific drill where she was limited her mobility. She was given a very specific instruction. The strikes were going to be her basic 4 or 5 strikes that she knows, but her footwork, one foot, had to be planted in a specific area at any given time. She could switch between the feet, she could step back, she could step forward, but one of her feet had to be in that area at all times. And I was attacking her from all angles and moving around and forcing her to maintain that. And we weren't telling her the purpose behind it, because what it became was her own purpose. And that was to bring all the lessons that she had prior to this to make that work for her in that specific scenario. And to see that develop in real time, to see her grow, one of the best feelings that any instructor could ever have, because things started clicking for her. Things started working for her. She started playing her own game while maintaining the parameters of that particular drill. Once she got comfortable with that, once she was able to really understand how she can move freely, not stutter step, not rush to anything, but just maintain whatever distance she needed to maintain. Keep her movements flowing, keep her strikes coming one after the other. That confidence that she built over time to be able to do that allowed her to do what she did in our next clip. We took away the restriction of the feet. We told her just move. If you want to be close, be close. If you want to be far away, be far away. But don't ever let it be outside of your control. Always make sure that it's you who wants to be there. And as you can see, she was able to accomplish that goal. She was able to do all her strikes. It was a slow start, but eventually she got to the point where she was freely moving back and forth. Just like Rick and I do, maybe not to that degree or that level, but it's the starting point of her putting together all the lessons behind her into that one moment, picking them out, not thinking, but allowing her brain, her mind, and her knowledge to come out when it needed to, as it needed to. And even though she was doing the same basic strikes, she was getting a lot more out of it. Her targeting changed, her range changed. She was anticipating when I was moving in, when I was moving out. And she was adapting to it on the fly without getting frazzled, without getting too nervous about what was going on, and just freely moving, flowing. Now, the last clip, we gave her a bit more of, let's say, a restriction. The parameters were, when we are at close range, we're going to do our Sombrata Drill, very basic, it's a contrada. 1 for 1. I do 1, she does 1, so on and so forth, back and forth. And when we were that close, she had to do that. She had to fall into that pattern. But the moment that there was distance between us, it would go back to her free flow. And again, at the beginning, it was a little choppy. It wasn't as smooth as it became later on. But she was able to grasp the idea of when she can jump in between a structured drill and a non-structured drill. And she was freely doing what she wanted to do. And it even reached a point towards the end where I was trying to get back into the drill. And without skipping a beat, she stopped me every single time because she didn't want to. She was no longer playing by the rules set before her. She was just playing. She was exploring. She was looking at different targets. She was realizing she can do this, she can do that, she can go back into the drill if she needed to, but ultimately she just moved. She flowed the way that we hope our students eventually flow. And it was a wonderful thing to see, and it was incredibly surprising to see her grow from the beginning of that class, being unsure, being choppy, speeding up and racing to something, to being calm, collected. She wasn't sure what she did, but she did it smoothly, freely. And she was able to accomplish her goals, whatever they were at that time, whether it was to hit my head, hit my hand, or hit my leg. And she was choosing on the fly which one of those she wanted to do. Now, that's incredible. I've seen it happen several times with other students. I do it myself with Rick, and Rick has got me to that point. But still, every time you see it differently because it is the individual who accomplishes that. And as an instructor, I have to very consciously be aware of how that person takes the information. And you poke and you prod, but ultimately it's about them. It should and always about them. We talked about 3 elements of teaching. What you know, you should be very confident in. But more importantly, what you know about the student becomes the key to how you're going to develop the lesson itself. Because it isn't about teaching them the next part. And I was that guy. I was eagerly trying to teach him the next part, teach him the next drill, teach him the next element of what I knew. Oh, they did really well on this drill, so now I'm going to push them to this one. But I never stopped to check if they really understood what they were doing or why they were doing it. It just looked good, and I thought, all right, they need to move on to the next one. Of course, I would be corrected because those were my lessons. Eventually, I started giving better lessons than Rick. I'm sorry, folks. I'm kidding. I don't actually mean that. I just had to jab at him because last week he hit me in my head. If you didn't see it, watch it because it's funny now, but my pride still hurts. Anywho, I started interjecting my own understanding of that particular lesson because I started seeing what Rick was doing, why Rick was giving those lessons to that particular student, because each one is different. The drills that you saw Dion doing, those were for her. Sure, we may have done a variation with other students. Sure, we may have done similar, scaffolding, the basic idea of footwork and our strikes with every other student. But the way that it was presented for her, the way that it was given to her, and the restrictions that were provided for her to learn and put everything together herself was all for her. All because Rick took the time to realize what kind of person she was and what she needed to accomplish her goals. Not the goals she thought she needed to accomplish, but the ones she actually needed to grow. So, again, this is very dear to me because this is where I am in my training. And if it helps anybody, great. If it was just good entertainment, awesome. Thank you for joining me. Either way, can't wait for the next one. I hope you join us. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do share it with a friend. And I'll see you on the next one. So, till then, 3, 2, 1, cut!